Philadelphia. Joel Embiid said it was great to be put in the same conversation as Wilt Chamberlain after he became the 9th player in NBA history to score 70 points in a game and broke Chamberlain's 76ers franchise record of 68 points in the process. Obviously, Wilt accomplished everything in the history of this league, and basketball in general, Embiid said after his 70 points helped the Sixers beat the San Antonio Spurs 133-123 on Monday night. So to be in the same conversation, that's pretty cool. Embiid finished with 70 points, 18 rebounds and 5 assists, a line that has never happened in NBA history before Monday's game, according to ESPN's stats and information. "It was just a great night," he said. "I had it going. I mentioned a few times, a lot of teammates are extremely unselfish and they just kept giving me the ball, and I just finished it." Embiid finished it over and over and over again, to the tune of going 24 for 41 from the field and 21 for 23 from the foul line, eventually reaching 70 points when he went coast to coast for a layup over multiple defenders with 1:41 remaining. He also had a season-high 18 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block and just 1 turnover in 36 minutes. Embiid had 24 points in the first quarter, 34 in the first half and 59, matching his prior career high, set last season at home against the Utah Jazz, after 3 quarters, when he closed the third with a step-back three-pointer. "The time that it kind of hit me, I thought, was the start of the third," 76ers coach Nick Nurse said. "I think he had a bucket and an and one, like in the first minute. I was like, wait a minute, he's already got like 37, 38, something like that. I was like, geez, that's a lot, with a whole half to go." At that point, with Philadelphia, 29-13, up by 15 after 3 quarters, it was unclear if Embiid would get a chance to go for the record or if the 76ers, like they have several other times this season, would blow the game open in the fourth quarter and give Embiid the rest of the night off. But San Antonio, 8-35, hung in, led by 33 points and 7 rebounds from rookie phenom Victor Wembanyama, and the crowd at Wells Fargo Center launched into a standing ovation when Embiid checked back into the game with 6:38 remaining. "The only thing I told my teammates was please just don't force it," Embiid said. "Let's just play basketball. If I'm open, pass it. If I'm not, make sure you make the right play." He was instantly fouled during his first offensive possession of the fourth quarter and made both free throws to set a new career high. Then he kept adding to his total as the final frame progressed. The crowd increasingly called for Embiid to shoot at every possible opportunity, to the point reserve forward Daniel House Jr. was booed for taking an open corner 3. "It's unfortunate Daniel House got booed for making the right play," Embiid said with a smile. "We were just trying to play the right way and make the right plays. Obviously I made shots and they found me a lot." Eventually, Embiid tied Chamberlain's record with 1:57 remaining on a pair of free throws. Then, after Philadelphia got a stop at the other end, he went coast to coast for the layup to get to 70 and was subbed out of the game a few seconds later. Ultimately, it was just the latest in a series of incredible offensive performances from Embiid, as the NBA's reigning most valuable player remains on track to have the greatest scoring season in NBA history. Through 32 games, he has 1,156 points in 1,096 minutes. That pace of more than a point per minute played is something only Chamberlain has ever done in the history of the league. Embiid, who won the NBA's scoring title in each of the past 2 seasons, is now averaging 36.1 points this season, a full 3 points better than what he posted in MVP winning campaign. "He's great," said Sixers guard Tyrese Maxey, who had 18 points and 8 assists. "I keep telling everybody, we cannot take this for granted. Not just as teammates, not as an organization, but as fans. Even if you're not a fan of Philadelphia, if you're just a fan of basketball, you can't take Joe for granted, man. What he's doing right now is special. He's not just doing it off layups, he's not doing it off just threes. He's doing it off every single thing. He's making free throws. He's doing so much out there. And you know, the kicker is he's on the other end, he's anchoring the defense as well. He's not taking any nights off on defense. So, you know, we appreciate him, and everybody else should appreciate him, as well. One person who appreciated Embiid's performance was Wembanyama, who was impressive in his first game against Embiid. He admitted afterward that playing against Embiid on Monday night was inspiring. A few years back, it was more of a guards game, Wembanyama said. But now, it's come back to a big man's game. I think it makes sense in terms of the game. We got guys, some guys all around the league who do a lot of stuff despite being very tall. It's the way the game changes. Now, we got to adapt. Embiid has been adapting his game for years now and is playing better than ever. That was not only evident with him eclipsing 70 points, something he did without even warming up before Monday's game, as he got to the arena late because of traffic, but because he believed he could have scored even more. I feel like when you take 40 shots, obviously, you are supposed to have a big night, Embiid said. I was actually mad at myself, because I missed a lot of easy shots that I've been making all season. A lot of easy pull-ups. But when you're shooting that many shots, which I never thought I would be taking that many shots in my life, you're obviously going to make some, and you're going to have a big night. Embiid's prolific night was nearly matched by Minnesota's Karl Anthony Towns, who scored a Timberwolves record 62 points in a loss to the Charlotte Hornets. Embiid and Towns became the fourth pair of NBA players to each score at least 60 points on the same day and the first since David Thompson, 73, and George Gervin, 63, in 1978, per ESPN Stats and Information. Chris Finch on loss after Karl Anthony Towns 62, immature basketball. Minneapolis. Karl Anthony Towns scored a franchise record 62 points, including 44 in the first half, but the Charlotte Hornets erased an 18-point deficit and stunned the Minnesota Timberwolves 128-125 on Monday night. Towns topped his previous career best of 60, which was also the Minnesota record. However, Towns managed just 4 points on 2 for 10 shooting in the fourth quarter, when the Timberwolves were outscored 36-18. He thought he was fouled on a drive to the basket in the closing seconds with Minnesota trailing by 1, then was short on a 3-point attempt on the final possession. Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch lit into his team after the game, calling it an absolute disgusting performance of defense and immature basketball. Finch went on to criticize how the Timberwolves responded to Towns' hot start, saying they stopped looking to make the right play. I mean, there's lots of times when, just because you've scored 2 or 3 or 4 points in a row, or baskets in a row, you know obviously we're going to try to feed a hot hand, look for a hot hand, but at some point we got to get back to making the right play. We got to get back to doing the right things, Finch said. Towns finished 21 for 35 from the floor, including 10 for 15 from three-point range, and now owns the top 3 scoring outputs in the Wolves' 35-year history. Having a night like that on a loss doesn't feel very good or historic, Towns said. The Wolves ran an isolation look for Towns with 12 seconds left, but Leaky Black blocked his driving layup attempt and then hit a pair of free throws at the other end. Towns' unsuccessful desperation 3 inside the final second ensured this was the 21st time in NBA history a player scored 60 or more points in a loss. Towns said there was no silver lining to his performance given the loss. We're number 1 in the West, one of the best teams in NBA. There ain't no time for moral victories, silver linings, great night, but just not a finish we wanted. We've got to find a way to win, he said. It's about winning the game. It's about staying number 1 in the West. It's about protecting our home court most importantly above all things. In the first half, Towns was 14 for 17 from the field and 8 of 9 from three-point range as the Wolves took a 69-64 lead. The 8 three-pointers in a half were 2 shy of the NBA record. The NBA record for points in a first half is shared by David Thompson and George Gervin with 53. Miles Bridges scored 28 points and Brandon Miller had 27 for the Hornets, who had lost 7 of their past 8 games and had the Eastern Conference's third worst mark entering Monday. Minnesota, meanwhile, has now lost 2 games in a row for just the second time this season. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to be immature, Finch said. There's always a lot of ways to be immature. There was a lot of immature performances here throughout the roster. We totally disrespected the game, ourselves, and we got exactly what we deserved. Towns' scoring performance was eclipsed by Joel Embiid's 70-point night for the Philadelphia 76ers in their win over the San Antonio Spurs. Towns and Embiid became the fourth pair of NBA players to each score at least 60 points on the same day and the first since David Thompson, 73, and George Gervin, 63, in 1978, per ESPN Stats and Information. Warriors aim to refocus after shock of Dejan Milojevic's death. San Francisco. The Golden State Warriors held their first team practice since the death of assistant coach Dejan Milojevic on Monday as the franchise looks to turn the page and refocus on basketball. It's hard to describe that last week, Warriors coach Steve Kerr said. Heartbreaking. Devastating. It's the saddest thing I have ever been a part of in the NBA. The last 5 days have been full of the shock, the emotion, the extreme outpouring of love from all over the world. The Warriors began their Monday session by watching a nearly 15-minute tribute coming out of Belgrade, Milojevic's hometown. A tribute game was being held between Mega Basket, the team Milojevic coached for, and Partizan, the team which he starred for as a player. Players wore warm-up shirts that read, "Sometimes even the biggest fighters leave us." A massive banner of Milojevic's face was displayed in the stands. The arena was standing room only. "I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like that pre-game dedication," Kerr said. "I think we got a better sense of what Decky meant to his countrymen. Of course, how much he meant to us and his family, Natasha, Masha and Nikola." After watching the footage from Serbia, the team took an hour to regroup and settle their emotions before beginning the practice portion of the afternoon. It was the first time they had been on the court as a team since Milojevic died suddenly last Wednesday after suffering a heart attack Tuesday night at a team dinner in Salt Lake City. Nearly 75% of the players, coaches and staff members who were on the road trip with the Warriors were in attendance at the dinner, and witnessed what was described as a traumatizing scene. Kerr said counseling has been made available to everyone within the organization, but especially those who were at the dinner. Today was definitely a little different, Warriors center Kevon Looney said. Looney had worked closely with Milojevic since the coach's arrival in 2021. Milojevic was brought to Golden State specifically to work with the team's big men. During the free shooting portion to close practice, Looney was working with player development coach Anthony Vereen at a different basket than normal. "You've got to come to work and got to get a whole new routine. There's a whole different vibe to practice not having him here. He was an integral part of our team, an integral part of my day-to-day routine. It's definitely different." Hours after Milojevic's death, the NBA announced that night's game against the Utah Jazz was postponed. Friday's game against the Dallas Mavericks was also pushed to a later date. Kerr said there was no way the team could have played either of those games following Milojevic's sudden death. But Golden State will resume its season on Wednesday when it hosts the Atlanta Hawks. "I am looking forward to getting back on the court and trying to get lost in my love for the game," Looney said. "I'll think about all of our memories and the teachings that he gave me and try to honor him that way. That's the only way I know how." The Warriors are finalizing their plans on how they will honor Milojevic, not just ahead of Wednesday's game, but for the remainder of the season. At practice on Monday, Kerr sported a black t-shirt that said "Brat" on it, the Serbian word for brother, and had a small heart with "DM" in the upper corner. The shirts will also be sent to the other franchises around the association. "Wednesday will be unbelievably emotional," Kerr said. "There is no handbook for this. We will honor Decky the best way we know on Wednesday night. We will be there to play a basketball game. We will find a way to mourn and grieve and play all in the same evening." As Kerr tried to figure out how best to help his team turn the page, he approached team advisor Ron Adams for advice. Adams told Kerr to ask himself, what would Milojevic want the team to do? "I literally could picture Decky smiling, laughing and saying, 'You mother F. Ers need to go win a basketball game,'" Kerr said. "We are going to do everything we can to win and we're going to enjoy life no matter what. That's who he was and how we're going to continue." LeBron James, ankle, ruled out for Lakers-Clippers showdown. Los Angeles, the so-called Battle for LA, will be missing one of its key characters Tuesday. Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James has been ruled out because of left ankle pain, the team announced Monday. The Lakers, 22-22, are number 9 in the Western Conference standings but 2-0 against their city rivals, the LA Clippers, 27-14, the number 4 team in the West. James, 39, is in the midst of the most dominant campaign for a player in his 21st season in NBA history, averaging 24.8 points, 7.4 assists and 7.2 rebounds. He is shooting 52% from the field and 39.1% from three. It will be James's 5th missed game this season. The Lakers have gone 2-2 without him so far. Cavs' Emoni Bates suspended 2 games in G League for entering stands. Cleveland Cavaliers rookie forward Emoni Bates was suspended 2 games without pay by the NBA G League on Monday for going into the stands after his game with the Cleveland Charge over the weekend. G League president Sharif Abdur-Rahim announced that Bates and Charge teammate Gabe Osabuahian were suspended for entering the spectator stands after the game Saturday in Alabama. The league did not provide any other details about the incident, which happened after the Charge's 126-105 loss to the Birmingham Squadron. Bates and Osabuahian will begin serving their suspensions Monday night when the Charge visit the Osceola Magic, league said. The Cavaliers selected Bates in the second round of last year's NBA draft. The 19-year-old, who had been touted as one of the nation's top prospects since his early teens, has appeared in 10 games for the Cavs and averaged 1.8 points in 7.6 minutes. Bates spent 1 season at Memphis before transferring to Eastern Michigan in his hometown of Ypsilanti. He was suspended last season after an arrest on felony gun charges that were later dismissed. Once he was reinstated, 6'9" Bates averaged 19.2 points and 5.8 rebounds for Eastern Michigan, and the Cavs were intrigued enough by his potential to select him with the number 49 pick. Hawks' Trae Young suffers concussion, out indefinitely. Atlanta Hawks guard Trae Young was diagnosed with a concussion after leaving Saturday's 116-95 loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the fourth quarter. Young left the game with 8:43 remaining after taking a charge from the Cavaliers' Isaac Okoro and getting hit in the face by an inadvertent elbow. Young stayed on the court for a few minutes, walked back to the locker room and did not return. There is no timetable for Young's return. He must go through the league's concussion protocol to ensure he is symptom-free before resuming basketball activities. He had sat out Friday's game against the Miami Heat with an illness. Young, who scored 15 points in the loss to the Cavaliers, is averaging 26.9 points per game and is second in the league with 10.8 assists per game. Numbers behind Joel Embiid's and Karl Anthony Towns' historic games. On the 18th anniversary of Kobe Bryant's 81-point game, Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns put together 2 of the highest scoring performances in NBA history. Embiid finished with 70 points, 18 rebounds and 5 assists against the San Antonio Spurs, the most points ever scored against the franchise. Towns finished with 62 points and 8 rebounds against the Charlotte Hornets. The two are the 4th pair of players to each score 60 points on the same day and the first since David Thompson, 73, and George Gervin, 63, in 1978. Embiid's 70 points set a 76ers single-game scoring record, surpassing the old mark, which had stood since December 1967, making it the 3rd oldest standing franchise scoring record. Embiid became the first player with 70 points and 15 rebounds in a game since Wilt Chamberlain in 1963 and 3rd to do so. He is also the first player in NBA history with 70 points, 15 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Towns became the 7th player in NBA history with multiple career 60-point games. His 62 points are Timberwolves' single-game scoring record. Here are the key numbers behind Embiid's record-breaking performance. 1. Embiid kept it clean during his high-scoring game, recording just 1 turnover. He passed Carmelo Anthony, 62, for the most points in a game with 1 turnover or none since individual turnovers became an official statistic in 1977-78. 21. 30% of Embiid's points came at the charity stripe, where he made 21 of 23 free throws. That's his fourth career game with at least 20 free throws, breaking a tie with Dolph Schayes for the most in 76ers history. 43. There's been no shortage of 40-point, 10-rebound games in Embiid's career. He recorded his 43rd 40-point, 10-rebound game Monday, tying Shaquille O'Neal for the sixth most in NBA history. Embiid is also tied with O'Neal for the most such games by a player since the NBA merger in 1976-77. 36-38. Embiid made quick work of his 70-point game. He played 36 minutes and 38 seconds, the fewest in a 70-point game in NBA history. His speedy scoring efforts caught the eye of LeBron James, Pau Gasol, and more as the NBA world praised the prolific center.